Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Martin, and I'm the Executive Director of NASH, the National Association of System Heads. And we're really pleased that you've chosen to join us this afternoon, or I guess this morning, for any of those of you in Hawaii, for our TS3 network webinar. This month, we're doing Scaling Instructional Excellence for Student Success. And we really appreciate you joining us. So let me just do a few housekeeping things first. If you are not speaking, would you please stay muted? We are going to use the chat for questions because we have many people on this call today, but we may at some point ask you to unmute yourself and ask a question that you've put in the chat if we feel that that would really make sense. We are going to try to hold some time at the end for questions, but we also will encourage you to ask your question as it comes to you as we go along, so you don't forget it, but also so that we can incorporate it into the conversation if that's what makes sense. This is going to be primarily a panel discussion, and so let me introduce the panelists now. These are our panelists today: Shonda Gibson from the Texas A&M system, Andy Goodman from the University of Missouri system, Penny MacCormack from ACUE, James Miner from the California State University system, and Anne Marie Nichols-Granenko from the CUNY system. And as I said before, I'm Rebecca Martin. So I think that's the last slide. We'll take those slides off now and really encourage you to use maybe the speaker view so that you can see the panelists, because we're going to try to make this more of a conversation than a formal presentation with slides. We think this topic will lend itself better to that. So I think most of you, that NASH has been committed to student success for many, many years. We have an active student success network called TS3, or Taking Student Success to Scale. And so this work grows out of that commitment and that network. We were really excited several years ago when we were approached by ACUE about being a part of an initiative with external funding to bring more high quality faculty development with a focus on student success and equity to campuses in our system. And we are very fortunate to have received $2.4 million from the Charles Koch Foundation, which, along with significant funding matches from the systems that participated, enabled us to work together on improving student success outcomes in terms of both quality and equity through coordinated, scalable, intentional, high-quality faculty development. We ran a competitive RFP process and had a lot of interest. We had 11 proposals from NASH systems to be part of this initiative, and we were able to fund 4, each one with 300 faculty on 5 campuses participating. And so the 4 systems that are represented in this initiative that have now been offering the ACUE program to their faculty on their campuses, I guess starting in June, are the California State University, which is a big system, 23 campuses, widely spread across the state. With additional funding from the system, they were able to bring 8 of their campuses into this initiative. The University of Missouri system, which has all 4 of its campuses participating. The Texas A&M system, which also was able to put additional resources into the project and has all 13 of their campuses participating. And the City University of New York, CUNY, which has 5 of its 11 senior colleges participating. So this initiative really attempts to be comprehensive. We really, rather than offering this at the campus level, have really been thinking about what does it mean to offer this work as a system. We have an ability to take it to scale. We can look at measurable impact on faculty, students, and institutions. We can contribute to community building and empowerment through the professionalization of our faculty. And this fits really well with ACUE's mission, which is very much devoted to student success through quality instruction. And I think that one of the taglines, if you will, that ACUE uses that really resonates with me is great teaching matters. They have been able to publish more than a dozen independently reviewed studies showing stronger and more equitable achievement among students taught by ACUE credentialed educators. So from a NASH perspective, this seemed like a very important, very valuable resource to bring to our membership. So my first question really for our panel is, for your system, why this initiative? You have opportunities to think about doing different kinds of things. Why did you put up a match when budgets are so tight? And why was a focus on faculty and teaching important to you? So let's see, James, you're up at the top of my screen. Why don't we start with you?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting us, Rebecca. I think the answer to your question was very simple for us. And that is critical for our student success efforts was what happens in the classroom. And we knew that unless or until we improve the outcomes across courses, across this large system, we had no chance to achieve our student success goals. And so we wanted to provide it as an additional resource for our faculty who were focused on course outcomes and more specifically, equity in those courses. So for us, given the size and scale of our system, we knew it was important to add additional campuses. So we were very pleased when we went to our chancellor at the time, Tim White, and approached him about the additional resources to do this. I mean, he didn't blink. And that's how important it was for us at the system level. So for us, this is intricately tied to our overall graduation initiative goals and our student success efforts.
Okay.
Anne-Marie.
So thank you, Rebecca, for inviting me and everybody else. Just like all of us here, we're dedicated at CUNY to the success of our students. And we know that so much of the research on how to better prepare our students for work and careers and life puts a spotlight on the importance of good teaching and pedagogy. So we're always thinking about ways of improving the learning experiences of our students, but when our Chancellor, Matos Rodriguez, was appointed in 2019, he made it clear that improving teaching and pedagogy across the university were priorities. And that led us to the idea of what we're now calling the CUNY Innovative Teaching Academy. And so with the Academy, we hope to improve pedagogy at scale across our over 7,500 full-time faculty and over 12,000 part-time faculty. And we also hope to better recognize excellence and innovation in teaching by CUNY faculty. But when we applied for the NASH opportunity, the Academy was just an idea. So receiving this award, being part of this initiative, allowed us to start to make the Academy a reality. And the other thing that was really appealing to us was the equity focus of this initiative. I mean, we have one of the most diverse student bodies in the country, and we take the opportunity for all part of our mission very seriously. So for this initiative, we're concentrating on training faculty who teach gateway courses that have high failure and withdrawal rates, because these courses, many of which are in the STEM fields, often serve as a roadblock that prevents students, especially women and minority students who are underrepresented in these fields, from successfully pursuing degrees and careers that they'd like to pursue. Thanks.
Okay. Andy.
Thank you, Rebecca, for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here. As James and Marie said, the greatest lever we have in terms of affecting student success is helping our faculty design and deliver courses in a better way. Not only does it affect the student outcomes, but it also affects change, a positive change with our faculty. They enjoy teaching more when their course is well designed and they feel like they have a plan that can help their students succeed. So it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Okay. And let's see, Shonda.
Yeah, so I could say ditto to everything that we've already heard before here, because a lot of those same reasons are the reasons that we got involved. But I would also add that we really wanted to do something where we could see a measurable impact. Because often at universities, nationwide, we have a lot of things going on that are related to student success, but and I like to think of those as investments, but we're not always really sure and certain about the effectiveness of all the stuff that's being done. And so we have to ask, looking at over time, where is the needle moving on student success? And specifically when we start looking at reducing equity gaps. And for us, we truly believe that, it's a need for us to focus on our faculty if we really truly want to measure and see something that's going to be impactful in the classroom, that's going to help our students to succeed. And then I'll also add that there couldn't be any better timing for this project than the last year, and I think that kind of shifted our focus a little bit, in why we were doing it, because I just think that faculty needed support this last year more than ever before.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. So, the pandemic coming in, actually, just to give you all a sense of the timing, we did the RFP process, and by the time we had, and everybody in the fall, and everybody submitted their proposals, I think around the holidays, and then we were reviewing them, and we had an external review committee who identified the subset of systems that were selected in the end. But then we went out to everybody to ask them to commit. By now, we were in the pandemic. Things were closed down, and everybody was worrying about what was going to happen to their budgets. So I was frankly really worried. And I was trying to look at what were backup plans, and we had kind of even started talking to the funder about, maybe we're not going to be able to get the match because people's funding was tenuous. And all four of them came right back immediately and said yes. So I think the pandemic influenced the decision making in different ways, but I don't know, anybody else want to chime in on this about what it meant to you at that moment in time?
Well, at CUNY, before the pandemic, the majority of our courses were taught in person, and therefore many of our faculty had little or no experience teaching online. So it became abundantly clear very early that we had to provide professional development activities so that our faculty could get up to speed on how best teach online. And what was really great from my perspective was we learned that our faculty were really hungry for this. Many of our faculty were already dedicated to continually improving their teaching, and they were eager to expand their expertise into a different modality. But even with faculty who never really thought about teaching before the pandemic, or those faculty who would go into the classroom and just wing it, they saw that they had to start being more intentional, and that what they used to do just wasn't going to work now. And what we heard from those faculty is that for many of them, it rekindled their interest in teaching, and they were grateful for opportunities to learn how to teach well in the new environment. And so dealing with the pandemic and what we've seen with the success of the NASH initiative so far, it's actually spurred us to reallocate some internal resources and apply for other grants, so that we've been able to expand the CUNY Innovative Teaching Academy rather quickly. And so even though it was established less than a year ago, to date, over 4,100 faculty have participated in opportunities offered by the Academy. And I'm really pleased about that. And I'll just note one other thing, and I know people at the other systems have noticed this as well. I've heard from our faculty about the importance of the cohort model that ACUE uses, and the community of learners that's formed among participating faculty, especially during the pandemic when so many faculty felt isolated. Those communities were really lifesavers, and faculty really appreciated them.
So Rebecca, let me just mention here, I think it's a fascinating question. It occurs to me that the placement of this particular project is on a continuum for all of us. I think we can all say, especially during the pandemic. But just prior to this project, we had launched a pretty aggressive course redesign project where we ran a system-wide list of courses that had both high enrollment and high DFW rates, or high enrollment and pretty significant equity gaps. And from the system office, we had returned that list to our campuses and said, gee, it would be really nice if we could do something about this. What do you think? And so we're coming off of that project and really concerned already about pretty significant variations in course outcomes for students. And then the pandemic, right? And so that project is balanced against a pretty public system goal for degree completion. And again, we knew that if we didn't improve course outcomes, we had no chance. And so this was an opportunity, it was another tool for us, and a timely one for sure, because we were all concerned about what happens when the majority of our instruction and teaching and learning moves to a virtual format. And how do we fortify and support the thousands of faculty across our system who are now going to be moving into this endeavor, some for the first time, some for the first time in more than a decade. And we had this unique situation where the environment would be new, not only for faculty members, but also for students. And so for us, it represented a very timely opportunity and an additional resource to really fortify and strengthen our environment for teaching and learning.
So Penny, I know you can have perspective to share from the many campuses that you work with about this shift to online instruction.
Sure. I think, what we saw across the country was certainly many institutions knowing that they needed to support their faculty, right? And I think for many, a lot of that support meant we need to get these courses into an online environment, and sometimes forgetting that making sure the course is in that online environment, making sure faculty are aware of discussion boards, breakout rooms, and other aspects of the LMS that would be helpful. Faculty also needed help in knowing how to teach that material. How does one use a breakout room productively? How do you engage students in a discussion board to ensure that that discussion is as rich as a discussion in a face-to-face environment? And so what we worked hard to do during those early months was, one, put out a toolkit to offer free assistance to folks and help them learn some basic online pedagogical skills, and started partnering with many institutions in order to help that other side, which is to make sure teachers not only knew what technology they had available to them, but also could utilize that technology to the best degree to engage their students in learning.
Mm-hmm. So Anne-Marie, you were talking about thinking about putting this in the context of a broader system plan, and to really expand your efforts and think about how to build that momentum and how to sustain it. Because we all know what happens when the grant ends and the resources go away. We want to be sure that this is momentum that is carried forward. Does any of you want to comment on your plans for that? I don't know, Anne-Marie, if you have more to say, but maybe some of the others might.
Well, Rebecca, I'm sorry, we're trying to figure out what will become the elements from this project that are most likely to be sustained in a favorable way across our 23 campuses, right? There will always be the next project, the next initiative, the next thing, but we're really paying a lot of attention to the elements of this project that faculty are gravitating to the most, right? For our faculty in our system who are participating, I think we all thought going into this, the stipend would be really important, right? Somehow we had to figure out a way to compensate faculty. Well, it turns out that one of the things that they have gravitated to the most has been the development of smaller learning communities to collectively focus on what's happening in their classroom. And I think that has been a pleasant surprise for us. And so that's one of the elements that we are already thinking about. How do we continue that beyond this project?
Mhm.
And James, I was going to say the very same thing about, one of the things I've heard most often in this project is that this has created community in the midst of crisis, and that the faculty really have leaned on each other and learned from each other. And I think on one hand, that has been, that networking and sharing of effective teaching practices has really been so important. And I think it's challenged some faculty too, because I heard a few comments from faculty about, going through this has helped me to get off autopilot and get back into teaching with intention. And I think that's true of some faculty. I think other faculty really needed some help to get through this. But then I think you've also got like a staffing issue, because like for us, what we saw was everybody had to go all in 100% to supporting the IT infrastructure, the instructional design components, the LMS support, the technical nuts and bolts of making remote emergency instruction possible. But the piece that was missing is that the how-to of effective teaching practices, and especially in the midst of a crisis, because not only are faculty living through that, but your students are as well. So, students are going through things that they've never gone through before. So we have to learn to support them in new and different ways. And the ACUE model has brought all of that inclusive teaching practices and science behind best approaches to helping students learn. And so I think it balanced out the ecosystem for us. It provided something that we wouldn't have had without it.
So one of our viewers has asked about graduate student assistants, instructors, and adjuncts. There are lots of different people. As you put together your cohorts on your campuses, were they involved at all? Andy, you're nodding. Did you want to speak to that?
Sure. We opened the application process up to all faculty, and for us, it didn't matter if they were teaching, if they were a teaching assistant, a TA, a grad student, or an adjunct faculty member. The key was, did they have a consistent teaching practice? So had they been teaching at least in the year before, and would their department chairs be supportive of their participation, indicating that they would be teaching again this year and continue teaching into the next year? And as long as they fit those criteria and we're teaching one of the classes that we were targeting, then we allowed grad students and adjuncts to be part of our cohorts.
At CUNY as well, we and it varied a little bit from school to school, but in general, again, we were concentrating on these high enrollment, high DFW courses. And so whether it was an adjunct, a full-time faculty member, or a graduate student teaching them, they were all eligible. So we have quite a mix across our system.
Good. One of the things that I've heard the four of you talk about is that this has been a way to invite faculty into the student success conversation. In some places, faculty have felt somewhat separate from, like, well, that's all just about retention. Graduation initiative is an enrollment management issue. It's not about faculty. It's not about me as a faculty member. And yet we know that they are critical to the success of every one of our students. And I wondered if we could see the slide, the circle slide, Elizabeth, because I think that kind of puts this into context of where this fits. So here you can see all the different pieces of the student success environment. And those of you that are part of TS3 will see our high impact practices, guided pathways, predictive analytics are all part of this, as well as many other things that are involved. And at the center here, we have instruction. And I know, Shonda, you're the one who brought this slide to my attention, although I understand it's part of the ACUE playbook. I just hadn't seen it. I wondered if you wanted to comment on this.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things that that we did early on. Our chancellor actually wrote a thank you and congratulations letter that was sent out to all of our participants. And, you know, we have 300 and almost 400 faculty that are engaged in this project. And as soon as the letter released via email, I got back about 50 responses from faculty immediately saying, and saying exactly what we see here. Thank goodness someone sees that we're in the middle, you know, we're at the core of this. We're in, we're in there day and day and having a greater impact and more engagement with students than anybody else. And they really appreciated us recognizing that. And so that to me was a really good indicator that that this is the sort of graphic and picture that we really need to share more often, so faculty do realize that we know they're at the middle of this.
So Sylvia says that she's wondering about the idea of community and the networking and sharing and its utility in delivering professional development. Will that live beyond the COVID-19 crisis? You know, how long will the need to connect last? Is this really part of the way your institutions are moving forward, or do you see that as a function of the moment we're in?
We've seen that for a while. So a lot of our faculty development efforts, both at the system level and at the campus level, have been based on this idea of developing community. And so I don't see it going away. I think I see it becoming even more important because more faculty have been involved than were before the pandemic.
We have faculty learning communities that have existed for some time. And we find that even 10 and 20 years later, faculty from those communities still have a bond, even when those communities were cross campus. So I don't see this, like Anne Marie said, I don't see this going away just because of COVID.
Well, let me just say, maybe it doesn't go away, but I do think that what we might refer to as a collective crisis matters. For the first time, I think in university history, for me, no one questioned why are we doing this, right? Everybody understood why this was important to do. And I don't know that there are a lot of occasions like that in higher education. So I do think for us, at least, we will have some work to do about around really galvanizing groups of faculty for these kinds of opportunities. And not that you manufacture a crisis, but I think sort of why we need to do this now, why do we need to refocus here at this time, I think does matter. And the level of coordination and support that we provide. We could, from a system office, go, you know, all of our campuses have a faculty development program and an office, and we could let 10,000 flowers bloom. But I do think there's something very unique and special by being able to take advantage of sort of a collective understanding of why this is important at this moment in time.
Okay, so we are about midway through this initiative. We have some of the cohorts are started back in June, but many of them also started at the beginning of the fall. And so Penny, maybe you could share with us some of the system level progress reports and feedback from faculty that you've been gathering.
I'd be honored to do that, Rebecca. And if we could put up the first slide of our data. You know, one of the things that I'm most proud of our company is that when we partner, we do partner with quality courseware, assistance with implementation, but we also right along the entire partnership measure the impact or efficacy of the work. And so what I'm happy to do today is to share some of the numbers that really kind of jump out to me here. And I'm grateful for the work that Rebecca, you're doing and these 4 system leads are doing, because these data truly are remarkable across 4 significant and regionally diverse systems. But the number I want to talk about first is this 98%. That 98% is a result of 1,300 faculty being asked if they find engaging in the course materials relevant and helpful to their work. So 98% agreed or strongly agreed. And to me, that actually, and I think someone on the panel said this, that just tells us how hungry faculty were and are for learning these evidence-based inclusive teaching practices to better engage and support their students. The other number, and all of these numbers are very meaningful to me, I'm proud of 25.5 new practices, 1,000 new practices being utilized. But the other number that I want to point out right now is the 8.9, or you can see underneath 0.7. What this number means is this is the implementation number. So this is the number of practices that faculty have actually put into use in their classrooms, or more likely, right, as we were just discussing, their online courses. And so what that number means, and the 0.7 in particular, is 70% of the time when faculty engaged in a module, and they engage in 25 through the course, they would put into practice a evidence-based teaching practice as part of their work for that week. And what's key about that is we know faculty oftentimes at a conference or a workshop learn evidence-based teaching practices. But what these data mean is that the faculty actually changed what they do in the online course or classroom and implemented that new evidence-based practice. If you go to the next slide, we actually have the student voice here. So this is where the students are letting us know that they're seeing those practices, they're engaged by those practices. And in this case, we have over 5,000 students indicating 91%, 88%, 86%, indicating the design of the course was helpful. There was a productive learning environment. There was active learning happening in their classroom, higher order thinking, the use of assessments to promote learning. And I just want to read just a couple of the specific questions students answered for us to get to these data. They answered agree or strongly agree 91% of the time to, I had a clear understanding of what I was supposed to learn, or my instructor helped me feel welcomed and valued in the class. My instructor provided opportunities for all students to participate in discussions. My instructor taught me how I learned, taught me to think about how I learned best. And my instructor's feedback helped me improve my performance. I know that's what all of us want students to be engaged in, those kinds of practices, answering yes to those sorts of questions. And so what we have here early on are a set of data that indicate faculty are engaged, they're implementing the new practices, and maybe best of all, students are recognizing that and appreciating that and being more engaged and learning likely at a deeper level. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
That's great. So I want to ask the panel, you all, each of the systems received system level data similar to what Penny showed you. That when there's much more behind everything she shared today. There's a lot, very rich data set. So you received system data and your campuses received data. I'd like to ask you, what you saw in the data when you read the reports for your systems. Anybody can just jump in there. Go ahead, Shonda.
Well, one thing that I was impressed by, and I'm going to focus on the students here for a minute, because in the responses, the first thing that really caught my eye was that the interesting patterns of responses by demography. So if you look at normal student responses, we're going to see that it'll usually reflect close to what our demographics are at the campus, or you'll see an overrepresentation of white students. But what we saw here was less than 50% of the responses are white students, and then we have an overrepresentation in the other categories of traditionally underserved populations. which is also where we've seen traditional equity gaps in the high DFW and gateway courses. And so for me, it helped me to see that I think we made the right choices on the first cohorts to focus on, when you're limited to, 400 faculty, which is only about 4% of our faculty population, and we had to start somewhere, and so it just so happened that we went all in those areas, and I felt really good about, that fact. The other thing that really stood out to me, and it has really driven some really important conversations across the system. More than 60% of our students that responded in this survey said that the pandemic has significantly impacted their ability to continue learning. And I think that was just, really a moment to stop and take pause and really think about, what our students are telling us, that they are struggling. And so what better time to be involved in a project like this? So anyway, student stuff was really stood out to me.
One of the things that stood out to me, because anecdotally, I have been hearing, and our facilitators have been hearing, that our faculty said that this is really a lot of work. The course is a lot of work. But when you look at the data, there, again, 98, 96, 97% of them are saying it's worth it because it's really relevant to my work. So I was really, because I knew a lot about the ACUE course, so I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And to be honest, given the pandemic and how tough it was for everybody to get through to do their work, I was worried. So I was really happy to see those faculty data saying, yeah, it's a lot. So yes, it's a lot of work, but it's really worth it. So I was pleased about that.
I think our faculty initially fell somewhere on a continuum as due to the pandemic of thinking, I really don't have to change anything with my course as I move it online. I will just do the same thing that I've been doing face-to-face and it'll work online. And on the complete opposite end of the continuum were those faculty who said, I'm going to have to change everything. Nothing that I'm doing is going to work in an online environment. And not many faculty, I hope, fit. We're sort of on each end of the continuum. But I think one of the things that we found, especially with our faculty data, was that the faculty felt very supportive. Anne-Marie, you're correct. They're saying that this is a lot of work, and I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed right now. But they're also feeling very supported. Faculty didn't know exactly what they were going to need to do to make their courses successful and help their students be successful. And they're finding that that the ACUE course is really supporting them in making the changes that are producing some pretty important results with their students. In fact, we have videos of several faculty talking about the experience that they've had in the course and the way that it is affecting the student outcome. So our faculty are pretty excited and are pretty happy with the results of the work that they've been putting in.
I would just say really quickly, we were all surprised by participation and completion. I think those numbers were just off the chart. But the thing that stood out to me most, we all assumed, at least in our office going into this, that so much of the development and assistance would be about teaching and learning in a different modality, right? This was how to get people up to speed, teaching in virtual environments. And so much of the feedback has very little to do with modality. It's really about engagement and student learning. And that was just really fascinating to see come across in some of the qualitative comments, is that those practices sort of travel across different modalities. And that was just really pleasant to see.
I have one more question and then we'll open it up. We think of faculty development as something primarily that happens at the campus level. And I think that I guess I would venture to say that many of the faculty that have participated in the ACUE courses have done it in the context of their faculty, of their campus, professional development, faculty development setting. But you all took this on as your system. So what's the benefit of doing it as a system? Why does it make sense? Some of you have already mentioned a little bit about your system context, but could you address what why do this as a system? You're talking to people on this program today who are members of NASH campuses and NASH systems. So what would you say in terms of the system approach, the importance of having a system approach to the work?
So I think from my perspective, there are a number of things. First of all, doing it as a system signals the importance of this. And that's why developing an innovative teaching academy for the system was something that was important to us. And we have a history of doing professional development at the system level as well as supporting it at the campus level. But in addition to the message that it sends, I think at a system level, it helps us to scale across the system. But really importantly to me is I hear regularly from our faculty that they appreciate the opportunity to learn from and with their colleagues across CUNY, many of whom they wouldn't meet if it wasn't for these system level offerings. And so in addition to offering these things at the system, we're also trying to find out what's going on at the campuses that's working really well and supporting those so they can be opened up to participation across the university. We've done that a couple of times so far and plan to do more of that in the future.
Okay, anybody else want to jump in on this question?
Just quickly, I agree with this idea of collective impact and scale. I think that's important. But the other thing I think is important for us is the significant variance in capacity of faculty development offices across our system. Some are great if we never provided any kind of assistance, but others could really use it and benefit from a system-wide effort. And so, one, it was very important for us, collective impact and scale, but the other is to have this sort of semblance or a sense of evenness across the system so that we didn't have very strong faculty development and support programs in one area, one region, a handful of campuses, and significant need at other campuses in our system. So for us to be able to say, we're all going to do this together and we're going to support you as much or as little as you need has really worked well for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Rebecca, I would also add that, we've used this community of practice model, where we really bring together a collective group of people who are passionate about something, any topic, enrollment management, student success, teaching excellence. And we really, I think our system serves as more of a facilitator, a supporter, an empowerment, component, not necessarily as the doer and the provider of, but really bringing people together. For one, like I love what you said, James, about so nobody feels alone at a campus, like you're completely on your own and you got to figure all this out. These kind of efforts really let this brain trust come together and share this information and support each other. And I just think that is critically important, especially as we go on and budgets are cut and, we've got to do more with less, and especially in this area of supporting teaching and learning. If we don't work together, I just don't think our campuses can do it all completely on their own. So I think they need us to help bring them together.
And I would just add to that not only do our faculty feel sort of isolated at times, but I think the directors of our teaching centers often feel isolated as well. I'm, in some cases, the only one on my campus that manages or focuses on teaching and learning. I think this opportunity is a great chance for our teaching center directors to have another way of connecting and sharing ideas.
Okay. So we're going to open it up now to questions, but there are a couple of questions that I see in the chat that have to do with, you know, where we are right now with the pandemic and where our faculty are. And I wondered if I could just ask any of you that want to reflect on this, kind of two perspectives. One is about the mental health of faculty and stress and burnout and faculty supporting one another. And I think you touched on this a little bit, Shonda, but it's probably more acute now in the pandemic. There's another question about faculty resistance to change, and that a lot of faculty, whatever that means, are resisting change, resisting this kind of movement where we're going. And yet that's not what you're encountering. Is that because of the people that stepped forward to participate in this are the doers maybe? Or do you think something else is going on there? So just a couple pieces about the faculty context right now.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Shonda.
I'll say that, you know, we do recognize that this is a very challenging time for everyone, faculty, staff, students, administrators, leaders, everyone's struggling and has been struggling for a year or more. And, you know, it just that the mental health and wellness is something that's top on our list. And we just convened this last week, a group of individuals from across the campuses to start talking about, you know, what kind of resources are needed right now and what can we do as a system, you know, collective, and to help to support what the campuses are doing and need right now, kind of the same way we're doing this, you know, but really looking deep at that issue of mental health. And I don't think that that's unusual or unique for just, you know, the A&M system. I think that's across the nation right now. So, you know, it is an important concept. And as far as I'll say that we haven't had this idea of resistance with this group. And I do think partly it is because of the initial group that stepped forward is very willing to engage. But I also am not hearing from the faculty development, faculty centers, instructional designers, any of that there is a lot of resistance right now. Quite the other, I'm hearing more about what's working well and how do we polish it and keep it and do this differently in the future. So.
If I might, Rebecca, just quickly mention, because, you know, I looked deeper into some of the data that we have, and as I've listened to the panel talk about, you know, choosing the faculty where students were struggling most, right? Some of those introductory gateway courses, what have you, it made me more excited about that 98%. And I think one of the things we've learned at ACUE over time is that faculty don't tend to be resistant to this. Faculty want to be recognized as discipline experts, but most have had little, sometimes no preparation to teach. No preparation with the evidence-based practices. And when they have that available to them and they see how differently students are engaged, I think it actually decreases their stress, you know, and they've got the community that they're engaging with. So it's just, you know, something to remember.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Looking to see if there are any other questions here. Do any of you have anything else you want to share? Anything that surprised you or recommendations you've had for other systems thinking about wading into this work?
So one thing I can say is that at 3 of our 5 participating schools, the campus leads were very intentional about putting some people in the cohorts that they expected would share the practices broadly with other faculty who weren't participating, and that's happening. But what I found is really nice is even at those schools where that wasn't an intention, where they didn't do that intentionally, faculty are going out and sharing what they're learning with their colleagues, and I think that's great, and it's a credit to the quality of the ACUE program that people think it's worthwhile and they want to share it with their colleagues.
Marie, that's a great idea. That was one of the things that we did as well in our application process, was ask faculty, if you are accepted into this program, would you be able and willing to share what you're learning with others, either in your department or across the campus? And it wasn't a requirement, but we did make it as an option, and we could gauge which faculty might be most willing. And we were kind of surprised that I would guess about 80% said they were 100% on board with sharing what they were learning.
I just would say one thing that has been critical for us is facilitation and engagement at the campus level. It's one thing to provide a resource from the system office and go, there you go, let us know how it works out. It's another thing, even for campuses, to pass along or to relay a resource from a system office. One of the things that has just been critical for us is the really good work of individuals across our campuses in collaboration with our team in the system office. Shinawa is here, Shinawa Woods and Emily Magruder in our chancellor's office, but you have to facilitate the learning and the engagement in a communal way that really advances the practices being put in place and the sharing of the learning and knowledge across the campus. So it is not something, I'm very pleased to say, we didn't underestimate the importance of that going in, but for me, that has been as important as any element of this project.
James, I completely agree with you. I would say that, the most important role that I've served in all of this is bringing our campus leads and the facilitators together on a monthly basis so that they can compare notes and share and put it out there when they're struggling with any area, and just keep it a topic that's a real high priority, because otherwise everybody's busy and they get a lot of things going on. And then you're right, if we just hand a project over and say good luck, that's hope that happens, it sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of priorities. So it has been the greatest experience for me too, because I think that I've learned a lot of things about what's going on at the campus. And then, recently we were able to share an update with our board. And I think these kind of efforts keep our Board of Regents really, apprised of what it is like to be at a campus, what's going on with our faculty, what's going on with leadership. And this has been a great project to feed that kind of information to the people who need to know.
Mm-hmm. And Shonda, I think it also gives recognition to the faculty that are involved in it.
Yeah.
And I know that some of you are planning, some kind of recognition when they complete. Would you like to say anything about what that looks like? Okay.
Well, it's a work in progress, Rebecca.
Okay.
That's what I can say.
Right.
We are
debating.
Yeah, we're debating lots. The campuses are doing some things at the campus, and then we're talking about doing some things at the system level as well.
So it's stay tuned because it's coming.
Yeah, stay tuned. Part 2.
Right. Part 2. Okay.
But on a broader scale, what I can say is that as part of our whole Teaching Academy, we're having discussions now about the importance of teaching and how to better recognize it in tenure and promotion and reappointment processes. And that I think is really important because, that's the reward structure for our faculty. And so having that discussion is something that is long overdue, I think, and something I'm really looking forward to.
Great.
Rebecca, I might mention that the academic directors that support your system and all your campuses have done some really fine ceremonies and celebrations. So they will be happy to reach out and work with you to help create something that's really special for these faculty.
Great. So I guess I'll say one more thing about the initiative at my level in NASH, which is that it's been a real privilege for me to work with these 4 system leaders when we get together on a regular basis and share and listen to them share with one another how the work is going and how we can support each other together to make sure it moves forward. And that's been a real privilege. Well, I guess what I'd like to do now is thank all of you for joining us today. I think this was a great conversation. It's good to be in touch with this initiative and the great work coming out of ACUE. We're very excited about it and hope we'll be able to continue the collaboration moving forward. And keep your fingers crossed that we'll find resources to be able to do that. But in the meantime, we see these 4 systems, they're certainly off and running and thinking about how to carry this work forward into the future, which is of course what we would all like to see. So thank you very much. Thank you all for all your contributions on behalf of our students. I know that you're making a big difference and we really welcome your participation. So have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.